we had a blind date in a forest, and actually we lived like
in a forest?
1 hour.
Wait a second.
Yes.
Wait a second.
In
You
a
had
forest?
a blind
Yeah,
date in a
What,
forest?
Little Red
Yeah,
Riding Hood?
I know. Yeah.
Hansel and Gretel? How did you do that?
Yeah, but actually, because I think we lived maybe 1 hour from each other, and there was this city in the middle, and I only knew this city from a music festival that took part every year. I didn't even check if there was a coffee shop or a cafe we could meet or a restaurant. So I just suggested that we could meet in the forest and go for a walk. And my mom, she was so scared.
Yes, I would have been too.
I think I would have been nervous about meeting
really,
somebody in the forest.
I mean, serial killers, that's where they bury their bodies, you know?
Yes, I know.
It's a good thing you didn't show up with a shovel or something.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Knife Wife podcast. I'm Suz, here with my husband,
Bob Terzuola.
We're professional creatives and entrepreneurs who live, love, and work together. We share our stories to find ourselves in others. P.S. This podcast has little to do with knives. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Knife Wife podcast. I'm here with my partner in crime.
This is Bob.
He's still Bob Terzuola.
Still the same.
And we're still two old people who are having a late in life crisis. And we don't have a TikTok dance, so this is what you get. You get a podcast.
What is the crisis? I haven't figured that out yet.
Well, what can I say? At the end of the road. Anyway, better do it before we can't. So,
Okay.
Anyway, everybody says you should have the Bob and Sue show, so we've got it. And we hope to give everybody a break from toxic media, because in America right now, with the election coming up, it's really ugly, and we don't need any of that. I just want to have fun and laugh, and I constantly watch comedy, which drives probably Bob crazy. But I'm always listening. Well, right now I'm listening to Elon Musk's book on Audible, and I guess he has autism, and so for me, it's been reminding me of my son, and I have a lot of jokes about autism. So he's giving me food for thought here. So today we have Jens and Karina Anso on, and Jens is a very accomplished knife maker and businessman, and Karina has been working how long? Say hello, first of all, guys.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Okay, and they're in Denmark. So they did their scouting troop before they recorded this, so it's nighttime there, so we're going to keep them up in their PJs.
I actually have my pajama pants on right now.
There we go. Well, Bob,
That's okay.
when Bob, I just want everyone to know that when Bob eats dinner, he eats dinner in his pajamas every night when it's just me. Okay? Always. And when people have been staying with us, he wants to go put them on. I say, wait to put your pajamas on, honey, till after dinner,
That's
please.
what I call dressing for dinner.
A lot of plaid flannel. Anyway, you guys have been working together for a while, right? How long have you been helping Jens in the business, Karina?
It's this Christmas, it's going to be 6 years.
Okay. When we first met Jens, you weren't even in the picture. We met him at the New York show, and he was there with Jesper, right? You guys share a table there or next to each other? You have a table? And Lucas, you were a friend of Lucas's? Yeah, a friend of Lucas Burnley's. I really liked your knives. I was really impressed. And I remember bringing Bob over there to when I saw your knives to show him. And I'm always the scout. I'm always the one in the room doing, what do you call it? The bird dog. I'm out there doing recon. And I'm always dragging him places to say, look at this, look at this. And so so you've been a very successful knife maker for many, many years. And I guess I want you to tell us a little bit about your business and how it grew, because I listened to a podcast where you were interviewed about going from one CNC to two CNC machines, and that was fascinating business information. But tell us a little bit about, how you got into this and the progression of your business.
So I've told the origin story so many times that I'm sure that some will already know it, but I got an early start as a teenager when I was around 16 in the late 80s, making my first knife from an article in Popular Mechanics. But when it gets really interesting, at least for me, was during college as a industrial design student, I started taking my hobby as a knife maker much more serious, and I thought that I could actually start selling these knives and use it kind of as a student job. And I've always heard that my knives had this American scent to them, at least from European knife makers and European knife interested. And that was because I'm self-taught as a knife maker from reading books, and the majority of the books that I could obtain was American knives, and I just saw a light in the full tang construction of a hunting knife and was making very basic, simple designed hunting knives at this point. But what I did was this was in the very early days of the internet and discussion forums around knives, and I was active on that from the get-go, from a computer in the library in my college. That was the early days. And I had the idea of, I wanted to sell knives in the US, so I made a post. If people would buy a knife, they would get 25% discount if they would write a review, an honest review, good or bad. And that led to 10 sales, I think.
That's a big risk to take, to ask them to review it, not knowing what they will say.
Yeah, of course. I've always been confident in my work, probably more so than I should have been, but ignorance is a bliss. But it actually turned out to be 10 rather good reviews. There was also some comments on what I could do better, which should be in any review, in my opinion. But actually, one of these sales led to an article in Tactical Knives magazine in early 2001, and I was doing my final project in college. But that article led to 100 orders for a fixed blade model that I had designed.
My.
And this was while I was living in a dormitory. I had a tiny, tiny workshop in a basement, and I really had to make a decision at this point. What should I do with this? And at least I decided that I should buy a house. Incidentally, it's the house I live in right now. I should buy a house, build a workshop, and make knives until I could get a proper job. And
that's what Bob's mother thought. Okay, you can do this until you get a real job. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So from 2001 and until 2009, I ran my company as a one-man operation. It was me, solitary, sitting in my workshop like most any knife maker at this point. And right around this time was when I met Karina, and quite short after, I started thinking that CNC was the way. I started out as a full-time knife maker making only fixed blades, but already at this point I had the interest in making folding knives, both because I saw I had a personal interest in making a folding knife. I've tried it a few times knowing that, okay, this is definitely not time yet. I think I made my first folding knife in 97 from a printout of an article from Knives Illustrated that showed how to build a liner lock folder. I bought all my materials from Halpern Titanium, and I was their first international customer.
Really? From Les and Marianne?
Yeah. So I got my first test of working with titanium quite early before I knew anything about anything, and I definitely thought it was too early. But getting ready, actually, while still working out of this maybe 20 square feet workshop in my basement, I actually wrote Bob a letter asking him for advice about how to make the detent of a folder, because I had no idea. I didn't even own a liner lock. I had just read about them, but I couldn't figure out what the detent's purpose was. on my own.
Did he write you back?
He wrote me back. He wrote me a very kind letter on one of his brochures, answering my 3 questions. I wrote something like 10 knife makers, but trying not to be a huge burden on each knife maker, I would reduce my questions to only 3. So I asked Bob 3 questions. I wrote out to Warren Osborne, I remember, and a few others, but not all of them answered. But Bob was one of the friendly makers that answered, and that helped me going. I actually think he teased about the book he was writing at this point.
Yeah, that was 2001.
Yeah, so that sounds about right. So that got me started, and I, rather quickly I found that folding knives was to be my future as a knife maker. I would still make my fixed blades, but folding knives was something that really caught my interest, both from a design point of view and from a maker's kind of view.
And Bob, did you have a similar epiphany about going from fixed blades to folders?
Kind of, yeah. I realized that I could carry more folders to a show than I could fixed blades. Just didn't have room in my suitcase for, more than 7 or 8 fixed blades. But I could carry a whole bunch of folders, and I soon realized that people have more pockets than they have belts. They usually only have 1 belt, but 4 pockets.
Right.
So I figured,
clever thinking.
Yeah, this is the way to go.
And you met Karina, you said, during this time. And Karina, I want to ask you about what your first date, how you met Jens. A very modern way, I guess.
Yes, actually we met on a dating website. I can't remember how we connected, but we started writing together, and we wrote together for a week and spoke on the phone, and then we met. We had a blind date in a forest, and actually we lived like
in a forest?
1 hour.
Wait a second.
Yes.
In
you
a
had
forest?
a blind date in a
What,
forest?
Little Red Riding Hood?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Hansel and Gretel? How did you do that?
Yeah, but actually, because I think we lived maybe 1 hour from each other, and there was this city in the middle, and I only knew this city from a music festival that took part every year, and it was in the forest. So I thought, well, I didn't even check if there was a coffee shop or a cafe we could meet or a restaurant. So I just suggested that we could meet in the forest and go for a walk. And my mom, she was so scared.
Yes, I would have been too.
I think I would have been nervous about meeting
really.
somebody in the forest.
I mean, serial killers, that's where they bury their bodies,
Yes, I know.
It's a good thing you didn't show up with a shovel or something.
And who did you think you were meeting? What did you think this guy did for a living, or what did you know about him?
Well, actually, he never told what he was doing. So I remember that he took a video of his workshop, a very fast video, so I could get a hint. And I was just, maybe he was making lamps or something else like that, a craftsmanship, but I didn't know what.
Yeah,
and then he said, oh, I'll bring something and show you so you can see what. Yeah.
So you're in the forest and he pulls out a knife.
And he pulls out a knife.
There's
That's a good idea.
Exactly.
Oh, there's a first date to remember.
Well, to my defense, I waited until towards the end of the date, which actually
was 6 hours.
It was about 6 hours long. So we had a very nice first date, and I waited until shortly before we said goodbye to show her that I actually made knives, and I brought a few. And she wasn't scared, so that helped.
Did you bring food also? Did you have a little picnic in the forest?
I know I brought coffee.
Yeah.
I didn't expect this day to last 6 hours, so I only brought coffee.
Yeah, but when you're young, you don't need to eat. You don't care about eating.
No, exactly.
Not at all.
Exactly.
Not at all. I see these girls out going to clubs and stuff, and they haven't eaten for a week. They don't care. They want to see what guys are there and have a drink and whatever. So
Karina, what did you think when you first met him in the forest with his knife and his 6 hour date?
Well, before I saw the knives, I thought, when I looked at Jens, I was just, he's the one. And I fell in love instantly. So that was nice. Yeah. And when he showed me the knives, I was just, is that a job? Can you, I mean, I didn't know that. So it was a whole new world that I had to learn about. It was very interesting.
And of course, I told Karina, this is just something that I'm doing until I get a real job.
Yeah.
Jens, when you were in college, I just very quickly, what were you studying? What did you think you were going to be?
I studied in the School of Architecture. So for 2 years, it was a very broad term of studying around architecture and design and city landscaping, furniture design, and then my major is in industrial design, which I learned everything from designing a screwdriver to a ferry, really. So it was very broad stroked industrial design.
Yeah.
But at this point, I of course I was making knives already, so I had this fascination for objects that had a size that you could hold in your hand. So I designed in college a bunch of smaller items, a electric screwdriver, a portable phone with a camera. This was before the whole look at each other when you talk in the phone stuff. But
The Jetsons.
So I had this fascination with handheld devices and tools. Of course, knowing that if I could sneak in at knife design, I would.
There you go. And, Karina, when I told my mom that I was dating a knife maker, she was a long distance on the phone, and she said, a knife maker? A knife maker? A knife maker? A knife maker. How in the world can a man support himself making knives? I said, well, he seems to be doing okay. I mean, he's not a millionaire like he is now. No, just kidding. And I said, but, he seems to do okay. He's a craftsman. And I did tell her that he was a jade carver, and my mother loved jade and was an expert on jade. Unfortunately, they never met, but she passed. But I did get her attention with that. And I went to see her once, and I had some necklaces on that were different jade hearts Bob had made me. And she was quite impressed with those. She was like, well, okay, this guy can carve jade. He can't be all bad. So, and what was your schooling, or what were your interests before you became a knife wife?
I was a teacher.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been a teacher for 12 years before I quit. Yeah.
Okay. Then you got a CNC machine, right, Jens?
Yeah, right around 2010, Karina and I actually built the CNC workshop together. So we live in this old dairy factory from 1890s, and it's a huge house, but only partially, the space is only partially heated and partially used. So whenever I needed more room for my workshop, I would expand into another room, and that's what we did when we prepared to get the first CNC. So we plastered the walls and put in heat and electricity and all that, and we did that as much as we could as a team. Back then, I had to do everything on my own. I couldn't hire any contractors to do so. So
Sure.
just buying the CNC, which to me was a fortune. It was the cheapest hearth you could get, and it was $35,000 or something like that. But at that point, that was more than all the cars that I had owned in my entire life combined. So
You couldn't drive it.
Yeah.
no, so it was such a huge investment for me. But I was absolutely positive that this would be the future of knife making. And back then, and when I started looking into it, it wasn't all that many knife makers who had CNCs.
That's right.
At that point, I would know about 5 or 6 knife makers in total. And when you say a number like that today, it's almost ridiculous, because before CNC, people would ask me, so what grinder should I buy if I want to become a knife maker? And now people ask, what CNC should I buy to become a knife maker?
Exactly. Bob is definitely a dinosaur in how he makes knives. Now it's 5 or 6 guys make knives like he does. And, I often wished he had gotten a CNC machine. I would have had a lot of fun with him making things for me, just not knives. But he wasn't interested in a computer. I mean, he can hardly work his phone. He just had Matteo, our engineer, help him with his phone. Yeah. So I don't know how in the world a CNC could have ever been. You had to have some other brain power.
Let's explain what the CNC means.
Okay.
There are people maybe listening to the podcast.
Who don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. CNC is computer numerically controlled. It's like a milling machine or a lathe that is operated through a computer on a program that you write. You write this program which will have the tool move in certain directions, up and down and back and forth, and basically create a cut on the material inside a machine. And it's got these doors you've got to close because it's flooded with coolant. And very high speed and very precise and accurate, and you can repeat, and that can do many, like for example, many knife handles all at once. It has like a pallet that you put a piece of material on, like titanium, and the cutter will travel around according to the program. And you could cut out many knife handles at once, or you could do designs with different kinds of cutters and so forth. But basically, that's what the CNC means, computer numerical control.
Exactly.
So when you got this machine up and running, how long did it take you to learn how to use it?
So, again, ignorance is a bliss, because I thought, how hard can it be? At this point, I would use a computer drawing program, a CAD program, to draw all my knives. I wouldn't say that I designed all my knives in CAD, but I would use it to make the working drawings, because I think it's partially based to my design education, that I would work to very exact designs, and CAD would just help me do that. So I thought that I had a big advantage in knowing CAD already, and I certainly did. So I figured, how hard can it be to run a CNC? But in reality, it was very hard, and it actually sat dormant in the shop for 6 months, where I was really, really regretting getting this machine and thinking maybe I can ship it back to them. But but at the same time, I knew this is the future. I just need to get a foot in the door somehow. And by coincidence, I took place in an open house event at the Haas dealership, and 6 months later, and there's a guy from a tech college where you would educate CNC machinists or CNC technicians. And he told me about this, and I took a 4-day course in handwriting G-code, the language that the CNC is using. And that kind of cracked the problem for me, because suddenly I had some understanding of what the machine needed in order to function. I never handwritten a single line of code since, but it gave me some kind of understanding of what was going on. And since then, I'm basically self-taught on the CNC. So I would program a very simple project, which was a small aluminum fixture for holding folding knife blades while grinding them on a regular grinder. So that was my first project. And I learned a ton from that. And then the next project, I think, was cutting out blade blanks to profile. So it was really just a very, very expensive bandsaw for the first many months. But
gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just adding complexity to each project, one project at a time, and that's how I learned how to use it. But the way that I have always used the CNC machine, and what some people don't realize about CNC machines is the CNC machine is dumb. It's completely dumb, and it's just a piece of metal if you don't understand what to ask them to do, and it will do exactly what you ask it to do. So if you tell it to run very fast into the vise, it will do that as well. There's no magic button on the machine that says make a knife. Anyways, I was making knives, and I bought the machine with the intention that if I could just make one knife more per month, I could afford to have the machine. Yeah. So and before buying it, I was really, really studying hard those knife makers I knew of who had CNCs and which pitfalls the CNC could give you. For instance, if you started making knives that the CNC machine would build you, I thought that was a mistake that I wouldn't want to do. So I used the CNC as just any other tool in my shop, and I would continue to use manual milling machines. I would grind, I would drill holes and all that, and then use the CNC machine where I saw that I would benefit from it. And it's never really been about numbers, but more the capabilities that the CNC would allow me to do. For instance, doing inlays is something that I've really, really dived deep into. And you can do that on manual machines. And I used to have several pantograph milling machines that I would use for inlays. The CNC machine will just do it faster, and if you're not a skilled operator of the pantograph, also more precise, I guess.
Yes, I see a lot of inlays in knives now that I didn't used to see. In the old days, maybe some of the guys made an inlay of pearl, either pearl or black lip pearl or something, but now I see all kinds of inlays in knives, and they're pretty. Nice.
That's something that I've always been fascinated about since I got the CNC. So
yeah, and then you went to 2 CNC machines, right? Because you must have figured it out.
I did figure it out, and the main reason I got the second one was that after having used the first one for, I guess, around a year or 2 years maybe, I realized that I could never use the full capacity of the machine only to make knife parts, because the knife still needs to be built after you pull the parts out of the machines, and I couldn't make them any faster than I did, and I still had the machine standing still half the time. So I came up with the idea of making some EDC tools and accessories. So I designed a carabiner in titanium, thinking that it would cater well to the same clientele that was buying my knives. And I stumbled upon a rather large success with these carabiners, and people really dug into these carabiners. And those I could produce really, really efficient on the CNC. This was actually the first time I actually started adding numbers to it. So rather than building parts for one knife, I could build 6 carabiners. And I started doing the math, and I could sell as many carabiners as I could pull out of the machine. So it was really hard for me to justify actually making knife parts. So around 2012, I bought the second CNC machine from money that I earned making carabiners, which sounds really ridiculous at this point, but that was how it went along. And having 2 CNC machines was quite the revelation for me, because then I could prepare parts on one machine and run parts on the other machine. So it suddenly became very, very fast in, for instance, making inlays. I could prepare the inlay on one machine and mill the pocket on the other machine, and then actually having a quite efficient workshop going on.
Yeah, your industrial design really kicked in at that point.
Jens, let me ask you about the carabiners. I'm curious about that. A device used on ropes for mountain climbing and securing ropes and so forth. Did you have to get your design and your carabiners certified in some way in order to be able to be used for mountain climbing?
If that was my intention, certainly so. But I was very, very aware that this was not a carabiner for such use,
yeah.
and I stressed that the carabiners that I was making was purely to put on your keychain.
Exactly.
Okay.
And nothing else. Nothing else.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, a pocket toy, and they're beautiful. And, you've made many items. Tell us some of the items that you've designed, because the carabiner isn't the only one.
No, the carabiner was definitely something that was a big success. But I also made these, I call them pry bars, but in reality, they're just small pieces of titanium. But the goal for selling these pry bars was so that you wouldn't use your folding knife and break the blade. So again, I thought it was a good match. I was definitely not the first maker out there to make these small pry tools, but it was also quite successful. But the one product that I really enjoyed making, or at least enjoyed designing, was a credit card holder that I also milled out of titanium, and that has just been such a great project. I don't carry a wallet. Denmark is basically cash free. Obviously, you can carry cash, but it's actually not all that common anymore. So just carrying credit cards was enough for me. So that was a project that I more or less designed for myself, and but you shouldn't show anything if you don't want to make anything. So I made the first 50 myself, and then I couldn't keep up with demand, and then I made a Kickstarter campaign, and that turned out, at least from the outside, really successful in the amount of products that I sold. I actually had Halpern produce the Kickstarter credit card holders, and I really enjoyed the process of making the Kickstarter campaign. In the end, when you paid the manufacturer, you paid Kickstarter, you paid for shipping and all that, it wasn't all that much left, but it was a really interesting project.
Okay, and during this, Karina, what were you thinking watching this? Because, in the forest, he was a knife maker, but now...
Yeah.
He's more than that.
Yeah, I remember when he came home, I can't remember if it was a New York show or a Blade show, and he told me about that he wanted to buy a CNC machine, and was just, what? And then when he came and said that he wanted to buy the second one, I was just, but how are we going to do it? And now we're almost having 4 machines.
Yeah.
So
Thursday this week, the 4th machine is being delivered.
Oh, do you name them? I would name them.
No, but I actually think it's about time that we do, because now it starts to get confusing. The new machine, the old machine.
The very old. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you should name them. Anyway, so now you've got many, but something also happened called Giant Mouse. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because Giant Mouse, I don't know all the knives that got awards recently, but Giant Mouse is hitting some home runs, as we would say here in America.
Yeah, certainly. So Giant Mouse is a knife company that I founded together with Jesper Voxnes and Jim Worth in 2015. At this point, I had been designing knives for factories for a good number of years. I think my first design came out with Spyderco in 2007 or 8. And since then, I've been designing for both American and European brands. And while that is great and it's something that I really enjoyed doing, I also kind of had the feeling that I would love more control of the process of turning a design into a product. And Jesper, at this point, had more or less the same backstory with designing for factories, and we talked a lot about that, and we also talked about the frustration that it also gives working with companies. And the frustrations are maybe not many, but one of them is that once you hand over a design, you kind of lose control with it. So we both had the ambition of something more, and then our partner Jim came in. He was a knife collector at the time, and he suggested that we made our own company, and more or less the rest is history.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about some of your awards. Now, last year you've gotten a lot of awards, and I think we should talk about that. I'll toot your own horn.
I just returned from Blade Show West in Salt Lake City, where Giant Mouse won the best EDC knife, and in Blade Show Atlanta this year we won the best fixed blade, or maybe it was best import, I forget. But this is the fourth Blade Show in a row, and with 4 awards in a row. So,
well, good for you. That's wonderful. And that gets
Thank you so
you on the
much.
covers of magazines and more press, and just one thing adds to the next. It's wonderful. We are getting close to our time limit, but I wanted to ask a couple things. I wanted to ask
Sure.
you, what are you most proud of that you've done since you've started your own business?
One thing, and that is quite short, and that is I'm so proud of making tools that people get to use. It's something that just makes me so proud every time that I see my work out there being used. That makes me so incredibly proud and happy to see that. I think my proudest moment was I designed a kitchen knife set that we make ourselves or partially make here in our shop. We have the blades made in Seki City in Japan, and then from my design we make the rest here. But I submitted that kitchen knife set to the Danish Design Award, and we got to the finals of that, and that was something that I've never ever thought I could compete in that level of design. Knives are not really meant for public attention like that, but getting to the finals, I didn't win the award, but I got a nice diploma that I reached the finals. That's probably my proudest moment.
Good for you. And then I'm going to ask a question I ask all our guests. What advice, for both of you, what advice would you give other entrepreneurs and creatives that would have helped you when you started? Is there some nuggets of wisdom?
I have one thing, and that is if you're not in it for the passion of whatever you're doing, and it could be knives or knitting or whatever, do it for the passion or you won't make it. If you do it for the money, well, I'm sure there's plenty other things that you could do that will give you more success than trying to make a business out of something. So if you don't have the passion, don't do it. But if you do have the passion, just go at it.
Yeah, I think passion helps in all relationships, whether it's your work relationship or a personal relationship with your partner. If you don't have that passion, it's the start, the spark, when you can't, keep your hands off each other. You don't have that. That gets you through the rough times. And so I think that's really important. And I think for Bob, too, he was very passionate. I've been passionate about my work, and I'm really passionate about a podcast that everyone can listen to. It doesn't have any political or no bad words, although I'm prone to bad words. Anyway, and Karina, is there any advice as the knife wife, the business partner, that you would give to other people?
For me, it was a very big jump when I quit my job and started working with Jens. Also because I think we're a good team about our marriage and about our kids, but I didn't know if we could work together. But we're good as a work team as well. And one thing that I have learned that we're not allowed to talk work when we go to bed.
Yes.
Because often we're reading in bed and then we discuss something about a project or some employees or something else. And it's not always the good vibes that you take with you. So it gave us lots of bad nights. So now we are not allowed to talk business in our sleeping room.
Yes, many times at the end of the day, Bob will start something, or we'll be in the pool, and he'll start talking about it. And I'll say, I am not on duty right now. I cannot talk about this. We just need our time, because without that, we don't have the other things. You know we have to pay attention to us. Even in the old people, we do. Anyway, and so what's the future for Anso Knives? Do you have some new things on the horizon, or some new ideas, or something new you're going to produce, or is it machine number 4?
Well, we're buying the machine number 4 mainly because we're switching direction just slightly. We've been doing this for about a year. We are making knives in-house. I wouldn't go as far as calling them factory-produced knives, but they're also not customs. I'm less involved in the process, and it's something that I've really been thinking a lot about how to present. So I call them shop build. So they're mainly built by a small team that we have. We have 3 guys working in the workshop, and they are manning the machines. They're doing most of the work. I'm still involved. I sharpen every one of them. I assemble a lot of them as well, and I do quite a bit of the work. But in theory, I could actually take a step back and not do as much work. So this is partially to give me more time to work on things that I am passionate about. For instance, designing knives. That's something that I'm super passionate about. And give me more time to work on my customs while we are actually making a living at the same time. So that is that's the near future. We have a project that comes out here in November 16th.
Okay. Well, I'll watch for it. And, I was part of a mastermind group, and what these very successful business people taught me, and right now I'm starting to peel away a lot of my duties with Bob, is to work in my genius zone. Every day. They call it your genius zone. Not that I'm a genius. I don't think I'm a genius. But in my creative, I'm a creative. I've always thought of new things and how to do things. And, when Bob sees me thinking, he's like, uh-oh, she's drumming up some other idea. But really, you need that time. And if other people can do some of the other work and you can afford that, I think you're headed in the right direction. You've been a smart businessman so far. I think you're going to do okay.
I appreciate
both of you.
that.
Anyway,
Thank you.
We're almost out of time. Bob, you want to say anything else before we go?
You're a great team, and we're really happy to know both of you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
We feel absolutely the same knowing you too.
Yeah, someone just wrote me this nice thing. I should read it. Anyway, they were reading a book about Ann Patchett. It's called These Precious Days. And someone said to her, and this person who sent this to me said, "This made me think of you. You understand that you don't live like other people live, and that your life is definitely not normal, which is just so very grand. And you guys live not a normal life. You don't go to offices. You don't go to a school and teach anymore, Karina. You live a life that's your own, and I think it's a beautiful thing. I wish more people could do it. I think we'd be a lot happier."
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, goodbye, and thanks for joining us. I can't wait for this to air.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us on the show.
Okay. Well, now that it's bedtime there, go to bed.
Yeah.
We will.
All right.
It's actually over our bedtime now.
Yes. Okay. Our past your bedtime. Uh-oh. All right.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please share this with a friend and subscribe where you listen to podcasts. Support our efforts through Patreon at TheKnifeWife, and for all Terzuola goodness, go to terzuola.net. And remember, if you're not laughing, you're not living. Comments and questions can be made on Instagram at The KnifeWife Podcast or our Facebook group, The KnifeWife Podcast. And if you're a couple who work together and would like to be on our podcast, tell us about yourself with an email at eccentricsuz.com or terzuola.net.